Welcome to the Free Play Arcade podcast. It is me, Chris Delp, the Free Play event organizer. I'm here with Corey Hyden, the owner.
That's me. And Chris Delp is, of course, joining us from 1856, 1545. We don't really know what year he's time traveled from. Chris, can you answer that?
Well, so we just got through with the greatest Super Turbo tournament of all time. You told me to get all of the best players from all time. We did have some complaints online of us not having the greatest players of all time. So you had me go find a time machine and go check out all the other players. I can tell you, Socrates, Abraham Lincoln, Beethoven, Joan of Arc.
The best Super Turbo players of all time.
Terrible Super Turbo players. I took it out there. No, I couldn't take the Blast City. I couldn't take the Versus City. I had to take MAME.
You were like playing some emulated garbage. And
right. But I took it out there. I traveled. There were these princesses. They sucked at Super Turbo as well. It was very, very unfortunate. Billy the Kid was not able to find him. I did go to like Time Magazine 1984 level Billy Mitchell with my MAME at Super Turbo.
How'd that go? He's still terrible?
He was terrible at Super Turbo. However,
that's not surprising, as we will get into, because he's terrible at apparently all games. Let's talk about...
No. Very strong at MAME Donkey Kong. Very strong.
You know what? If you get unlimited chances, you're good at a lot of games.
Yeah, well, I could not take him at MAME Donkey Kong, but MAME Super Turbo, just... done. Anyway, that's why I'm dressed in this getup, and not because I'm going to the Renaissance Festival later.
One other person on the mic.
Jeremy Withers.
Not dressed up.
Fighting game commentator and boat guy from Street Fighter 2.
That's me.
All right.
Ken Stage.
All right, so first, about a month ago, maybe even longer, 6 weeks ago, we recorded a podcast on Billy Mitchell. It was the most controversial thing I've ever done in a string of controversial things because I said Billy Mitchell is a dirty, obvious cheater.
Yes.
So recently, Twin Galaxies and the Guinness Book of World Records have announced something not too surprising to me. Do you know what that is?
Yes, that after extensive research, they determined that he is how did you word it? A dirty,
well, we can go dirty, no good, terrible, unfortunate, ruining of arcade games, generally cheater, Billy Mitchell.
Yes. Twin Galaxies came out with a very, very long explanation of why they do indeed believe that he cheated, and they rescinded all of his world records in all the games, I believe.
Well, so once you're a cheater. So They've removed every single score, which, of course, if you go back and look at the comments to our previous podcast, you can see there were some people there that were saying, y'all are being jerks. Y'all are assholes. Y'all are going too hard. Nothing's been proven yet. Now,
to be fair, it was proven. It wasn't.
It had 100% been proven. He was obviously cheating. And we can go back and look at the historical resources and everything, the King of Kong videos, all of that, which everyone else has already done way before us. And now Guinness Book of World Records, Twin Galaxies, they've done the same thing. His Donkey Kong was bullshit. His play beyond anything we really know, and who knows what happened back in the actual 80s. But once you got to the ability to emulate, every score that he's turned in that has been publicly recorded, that hasn't been at a King of Kong or a Kong Off challenge, anything that hasn't been publicly recorded on someone else's machine was fake. Right. So,
well, I was trying to be the I guess voice of reason last time, and just sort of, I mean, the evidence was there. It seemed quite clear, but I was gonna wait until I heard from other people as well, consensus and whatnot, and it's come back. And the thing is, when you do this, when you're caught cheating, you are a cheater. So all of those scores, like in my mind, they are. I don't trust them unless I have seen it myself. I don't trust referee verification on a Billy Mitchell score now because I've seen this. I mean, I've heard from many people that I trust that he is a very good gamer. So I believe that he is capable of some scores, but unless he does it live, there's no...
So he's clearly above average, right? He is a above average
I've never
gamer.
seen the man play.
But here's where we're at. if you look back at his historical scores, it's not really surprising that they removed them. Do you know the games that he had high scores on?
Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. That's where I would... Cubert? Did he get a Cubert in there?
No. So it was...
I know he trained someone on Cubert.
It was Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., Miss Pac, and Burger Time, and Centipede.
right.
I mean, these are heavy hitters of the arcade world that he purported to have the highest scores. Now, guess how many people will testify that he actually scored those points?
The referee, maybe?
Himself, so 2?
No one. Not even him anymore will go on record and say that he did it. Now, here's what's really interesting that I didn't realize before when we were talking about his perfect Pac-Man, because that is, like, as an arcade player, as an arcade owner, I respect the hell out of someone who could do a perfect Pac-Man.
Right.
And the first ever, that's insane. So now they've attacked it a couple different ways. And he's admitted that his very first time doing a perfect Pac-Man, he was alternating levels with his friend. Which means he doesn't have a record there. The second time he says was in the mid-90s, but almost certainly, based on the testimony of other people, he's talking about doing it on like a computer emulated version.
Really?
Whether or not MAME existed, the photos of him celebrating doing a perfect Pac-Man in the mid-90s has a huge like VGA style computer monitor. Like, I mean, it might as well have a cow graphic on the side and be a Gateway 2000. He is celebrating next to what's clearly not a Pac-Man arcade. So people have, well, and it makes sense, right? Even if he actually really did all the scores he said before, once you've gone down that road, once you've submitted to an official scoring body something that is obviously manipulated and that he's cheating on, how could they ever trust anything he's ever submitted?
That's the way I feel about it. I try and go down in flames with the truth because I want to be trusted when I give you something that's outlandish. If I tell you some story that sounds wild, it's true because I just want to fall on that sword of truth if I can. Yeah. Right. So now that this has happened, I just can't see trusting anything unless I see it with my own eyes. Do you know who Billy Mitchell is, Jeremy?
Yeah, I do. He's obviously, like, if you don't know who he is, you've probably at least heard of him from King of Kong. Obviously, that's where his name kind of started to, I guess, take off into the mainstay. And he also makes hot sauce too. So.
That's true. That's true. Hot
Ricky's
sauce.
Hot Sauce.
Right.
It's his family company. That's where he supports his lifestyle of arcade cheating. He gets all the money.
Why? It's so easy to get MAME.
So I'm going to actually go through the dates he set the scores, and I'm going to throw this at you, Chris. These are all referee verified. Tell me which ones you think are legitimate. A perfect Pac-Man in 1983.
83?
That is the first time he said he got perfect Pac-Man.
No.
The next, in 1985, January, he scored 703,000 points on Miss Pac-Man, which was the world record at the time. Now,
You're saying 80 or 90?
He's saying 85.
85.
Now, 85, that would have been a monster score. Now, the problem, I think, with the Miss Pac score is, you can probably score that relatively easy on an original Miss Pac. Now, that's original speed Miss Pac.
I would have trouble on original speed Miss Pac.
Well, you'd have trouble staying awake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to zone for
It's brutal. That's a much longer game than he says actually it took him.
Oh, he found a shortcut.
But that's the problem. Even back then, Twin Galaxies was dividing speed chip, even though there are a million different speed chips that have affected the score a million different ways, which is one of the reasons Twin Galaxies can't be trusted, because these arcades since the 80s have been manipulated, changed. Like, for example, we could never even compare the record on our Miss Pac sit down, which uses original speed chip, and the record on our Miss Pac stand up, just at our Richardson location, which uses the super Miss Pac chip, which I think is the best Miss Pac chip. But they're not even comparable games. So, anyways, Billy Mitchell says in 85, there's actually no referee that verified it. This was a true Billy Mitchell's word verified score. And it was not surpassed on original Miss Pac until 2001. So, do you think he really set a score that stayed for 16 years? Or do you think he said something, and because he had some mild credibility, which I don't know if you remember. All right, hold on. We should probably step back 100%. Let's do Billy Mitchell's life stupid story. Because he was in Life magazine, right? Early 80s, mid 80s.
Was it Life or Time?
It was Life, but
okay.
they are owned, but it's Time Life magazine.
enough.
So I believe it's all Life that actually took the photos. I don't know if that's true. The later one was definitely Life because they did some follow-ups in like 2001 and 2014. Life then again featured the arcade players because it still was a huge narrative in people's lives. So they went back. So I think it was actually Life magazine. They get the high score players on a bunch of different games. Some of them relatively obscure nowadays, like Tuk Tuk Damen and the mispronunciation of King Tut and a bunch of other stuff. And then they had like Steve Sanders, Billy Mitchell, all these players that allegedly had these high scores on games. And it turns out at least 2 were making scores up because I don't know if you remember.
Steve Sanders, right?
Yeah, Steve Sanders, I think, had the Donkey Kong high score at the time.
Sanders?
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's spelled the same. It's spelled identical. There's no U in his name. So
Sanders it is.
So let's go with Sanders. So he has allegedly, I think, the Donkey Kong high score of like 3 million or 2.5 million. I can look it up. Something that's not possible in Donkey Kong. And all these players are like, man, we're really good at Donkey Kong, but you must be some sort of god. And I mean, but it still took like 4 years or 3 years for people to really throw that record out.
That's one of Billy Mitchell's go-to stories is confronting him during that photo shoot and beating him.
And of course, they're
Donkey
like
Kong.
best friends now. And
Correct,
Steve Sanders somehow got into law school and got accredited to the bar, which really is irritating to someone who is a member of the Texas bar, named Corey Hyde, sitting here right now, who went to law school, passed the bar, was a lawyer.
But did you pass it on MAME?
I feel like my score on MAME probably would have been triple.
Oh,
And I actually got the second highest score on the bar in the test that I took.
maybe a MAME bar world record.
Probably. I mean, yeah, I would have submitted it for the original. I would have ignored the screen transition issues or anything like that and just really gone for the good one.
Should have had the referee with you then.
Right. Well, I should have brought Chris Delp, who is a member of my entourage, and just submitted and said he was there too.
Right.
All
Referee verified.
So the other scores that Billy Mitchell has built his fame on. All right. So the perfect Pac-Man, the first perfect Pac-Man was allegedly in 1983. The 700,000+ on Miss Pac was allegedly in 1985. Again, that stood until 2001. Now, when scores stand that long, you naturally start to suspect them, right?
I have to say I do when I have the referee verification next to him, just because, like you say, they stand for so long, and you put a bar up there and people will surpass it. They'll work to surpass it. Those records are made to be broken. That's why they have that saying. So yeah, it does seem dubious. I try to give him the benefit of the doubt. Billy Mitchell does not get the benefit of the doubt at all for me.
This is not a obscure game. This is Miss Pac-Man.
Yeah, no, it's
and allegedly he held a record for 16+ years during the time all these people were bringing Miss Pacs into their house, because what we know about Miss Pac-Man is from about 1987 until 1997, the majority of Miss Pacs were purchased by home use owners, brought in their house and played compulsively by like one person.
So jealous.
So these people had their own Miss Pac, and somehow until 2000 and what did I say? 2001.
Yeah.
No one even that's probably bullshit. We don't know for sure, but now that we know Billy Mitchell has zero scruples, will cheat at any cost.
I've heard so many dubious claims when it comes to classic arcade scores too. With Lauren when she broke her record, every time Lauren would exit the room, it would be like, oh yeah, we played for longer than that. Sure you did, buddy. You played for more than 25 hours just on a lark and didn't record it or submit it or anything. Just for the hell of it. Of course you did. All
right, so Burger Time, big game. We love Burger Time. There's a emulated Burger Time mini right behind us that I was playing earlier. In 1984, he set the world record. It was not surpassed until 2005. What do you think about that one?
I mean, do you have any thoughts on this, Jeremy?
I was to say it's 2 decades, like you said, these older games that people constantly grind on. The thing is, Billy Mitchell no longer gets the benefit of the doubt with me. So what do I assume? I assume no. Yeah,
I assume no until I see it proven. Now he could come back. I will believe it when I see it. I won't be like, oh no, you scored that score right in front of me. I deny it because it's Billy Mitchell. No. He has the ability to play it if he has the ability to play it live, and I would believe it. Yeah, but No,
I mean,
I
Cloud
don't.
pretty much ruined at this point, right?
Right.
So,
I mean, I believe he's better than Steve Sanders at Donkey Kong, whatever that means. But like I said,
here's what I'll say just to irritate Billy Mitchell, because I know he's actually watched our last podcast. Steve Sanders, I think, is a better Donkey Kong player than Billy Mitchell. I'd love to have them both email me right now and say, let's schedule an appearance. Because you know who has multiple real Donkey Kongs? Free play. We have plenty. So they can come play whenever they'd like and really put up real scores. Now, here's the other thing I know. Neither one of their scores would be in the top 100 all-time scores.
right.
Not in the top 100 all-time players. And I want to make sure that I'm 100% clear that Billy's best live score is not in the top 10,000 best live all-time scores, and he might be in the top 1,000 players, but those players have put up so many higher scores than he could ever even consider on Donkey Kong. And I think obviously that is what caused him to decide, you know what, I'm just going to keep cheating because Donkey Kong is big. Donkey Kong is a huge high score game. And the theory behind these players playing Donkey Kong and going for these scores, it was so deep and dense. And if you go look at them chasing Billy Mitchell, who was faking his scores, and Weeby, who was not faking his scores, you can see them getting so deep. And now these players, you know, a decade later, are so far beyond.
Well, now we have a perfect game.
Well, just a practically perfect. No one's sure it's possible to break the current world record on Donkey Kong because it was so perfect.
Yeah, I've watched the run. It looks perfect to me because it's using every scoring glitch they could find with every single second, every frame.
Well, right.
You know, controlling every barrel. They
maxed out. I mean, because in Donkey Kong, you have all these little ways to add scores, right? Like even on the first level, which is famous from King of Kong, once the little thing hits the fire and starts chasing you, if you jump close to it, you gain the bonus points. Bonus points. Every single level, this guy through the entire game of Donkey Kong before it crashes, 256 or 255 levels. Did each step that was possible to maximize his score. Unbelievable. And it's I'll look up the Donkey Kong level count. But anyways, Billy Mitchell, none of his scores are anywhere close to the top scores. None of his play has ever been considered by any of the top players to be top tier. I mean, there are at least, probably at this point, 200 players that are better at Donkey Kong than Billy Mitchell.
Right.
And of course, Billy Mitchell is who we're talking about today because he lied about his scores, he cheated, he faked, and he did everything he possibly could to take advantage of a system that was built to celebrate celebrity, right? And he personally gained probably hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of dollars off of his celebrity, based almost entirely on his scores. That so we went over. Pac-Man was from 1983. Referee verified. Donkey Kong, his first high score, which was 886,000, was 1982. No witnesses. And any witness that was there, it has actually questionable credibility, but no actual referee verified that high score. Miss Pac, which stood for a decade and a half, 703,000, 1985. Burger Time, 1984. Not beat for more than 2 decades. Centipede, and this is actually interesting because in 1985, Centipede became the hot high score game. Most people don't realize that because it's a long time ago. But Centipede was the chase, and what it was 10 million was the chase. 10 million points scoring on Centipede, which I can do, but that was the chase. He was allegedly the 5th person to do that. Now, 2 of the players that have done that have kind of said, not directly, not 100%, but they're not sure they were really playing Centipede. They're not sure if the version they were playing was the original, if it was speed hacked, if they were allowed to shoot more bullets than you can shoot in Centipede, because Centipede is a 1 bullet hit, then you can recreate the bullet. And that's actually the hard part about Centipede, right? If your stuff is coming close to you and you miss, your bullet has to clear the whole screen before you get another one. Space Invaders, Galaga, similar games.
Also knows about this.
Right. It's a very standard gameplay mechanic in the 80s because of just how the draw rates worked. So those guys have already kind of said, and Billy Mitchell mysteriously, after being hey, I can set a high score in Miss Pac, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. As soon as Centipede became the hot game, he was somehow immediately a great Centipede player. He was somehow the 5th person to score 10 million. And he was also the last person to score 10 million on Centipede until, let's see what this says. Nope. Still the last one. As of 2015, the last time anyone checked, no one since 1985 has scored 10 million in Centipede. Now, anything I know about Twin Galaxies, and anything I know about records in general, when they have stood for so long, despite so many people trying to get them, despite so many people playing near perfect games, means that that's probably not actually possible. Now, I've not looked into Centipede. I've not dug into Centipede. I've dug into a bunch of other games that have totally fake, nonsensical records.
Yes, I've seen those as well.
But the mere fact that Billy Mitchell is the very last person to score 10 million on Centipede makes me wonder if anyone has ever actually scored 10 million on a real Centipede. And I mean, right now, if it's the case, and we'll double check, if it's actually the case that no one since Billy Mitchell in 1985 or 1984 1985 has scored a real 10 million on Centipede, I'll offer right here, without even questioning, $1,000 for someone to score 10 million on Centipede in free play. And once I do some research, I'll offer $10,000. If it has not happened since 1985 on Centipede, I don't think it's possible. Which I'm going to have to look and see if anyone on MAME has even done it.
Right.
Anyone with the ability, which MAME, of course, we'll get into a little bit more. You have the ability to completely pre-program your game in MAME. That's what speedrunners do. It's computer assisted, whatever.
Right.
That's what they do with on the emulated games, and it's why even verifying a Donkey Kong score on MAME is so brutally hard. And though they try to do it, even then they're kind of like, we know the real world record is on the arcade game.
Right. I personally never consider the MAME records. I mean, I know many people don't have access to these classic arcade machines to play. Coming out to Richardson and Arlington, we have them here. But, regardless, it's so easy to cheat with MAME. It's so easy to just, I've beat Castlevania like Keith. I just save it right outside of death's door, and then try 17,000 times and then record the one where I got through.
Well, and the great thing about MAME is with a single press of a key, you can save your state continually. So if every 2 seconds on MAME you hit save, anytime you died, you can go back. And you can actually go back to whichever save state you want that you've been saving every 2 seconds and start there and do it. And that's actually, I think, one of the big criticisms of Billy Mitchell before they did the frame-by-frame analysis and learned this is a completely MAME-generated, completely computer-generated, not original Donkey Kong board level. And we discussed this in a previous podcast. Billy Mitchell was caught because when the level draws, even the very first level in Donkey Kong, MAME draws it totally different. And MAME is, of course, the computer-emulated version of arcade games, multi-arcade machine emulation, or whatever it is. And someone recognized that, and it was because all these Donkey Kong players a lot of Donkey Kong players will practice on MAME and then really go to the arcade to try to set the real record.
I'm not a Donkey Kong player, but that's how I broke the King and Balloon world record.
Right. So you'll practice there, and then you'll go try it on the real thing. And most emulators get it close enough that you can actually do that, and especially in Donkey Kong, which has been optimized like a million different times. Donkey Kong is one of the ones on MAME that is as close as it can get without actually being the real thing, which is not the real thing because we learned Billy Mitchell, the way the screen draws the level is different, and all of his videos, the tapes that he submitted, exhibit those same symptoms that exist in MAME, and they caught him. Duh. They've erased all his records ever. Every single record that Billy Mitchell's ever had is gone.
And banned him for competing in the future as well.
Right. So one of the things, we can't really announce anything yet, but we will be inviting Billy Mitchell to free play in the future to try to prove himself. I don't know if he'll ever come because I've been very mean to him because I hate cheaters. I think cheaters suck. I understand the kind of that pull of when you can cheat and you can potentially get away with it, why he would cheat. I understand that from a human perspective.
Right. And
like,
a lie builds on itself, and it just keeps going. And
I get why if you thought
build,
you could get away
your
with it,
entire
you would
ego
do it.
on it, and you have stage performances where you're just talking about the greatness of your own records.
Could you imagine for 3 decades being considered the best video game player on the planet?
Well, yeah, because you've also built up an entourage too that people will believe it.
No one's gonna. Well, right. No one's gonna question it, and that's. I mean, because I think about that sometimes. Like, I own an arcade, right? I own a couple arcades, and we're opening more and more, and I own a ton of arcade games. And I could submit a score, and I don't think I've ever actually legitimately submitted a score to try to even be on the high score list, because I feel like that power in and of itself is too much. No one would ever question a score I submitted. And I've kind of thought of that, like, as we've been dealing with this Billy Mitchell story, I've thought about that abstractly and how powerful and how insane that must have felt for him, because as long as he could put any kind of tape together, any kind of run, no matter what, I mean, even if it was the lowest quality video ever, people were going to believe it.
Well, that was the thing with Twin Galaxies before, this most recent incarnation of it was just, it seemed like it was there to protect records that were there.
Right.
Or protect the record holders. Well, so as they get other ones. And I mentioned this in a previous podcast, I went out to Japan and just watched people wreck. And I mean wreck times 1,000, literally. Records that are in the Twin Galaxies books right now, and it's just like they would never even consider submitting a record. It's
right. It
they
doesn't
could sit
matter.
there and just put 9s on the machine and then play for 100 or 50 yen all night, and that's it. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, Twin Galaxies forever they started out accepting scores they probably should not have. And immediately they were put on the defensive trying to defend those scores because they'd accepted them. They were the governing body.
Right.
And once you've accepted those scores, you either have to decide our systems in place at the time were total garbage, or we need to defend these scores as being legitimate.
Right.
And now time and time again, Twin Galaxies have been embarrassed. Because
I will say they're taking the right steps.
Now.
Purging, because they need to. Like, and it's embarrassing. It's actually mentioned in their big long Billy Mitchell post that this is going to be embarrassing over and over again, and it will. But it has to happen. It has to.
Well, so
and there's still scores out there that have to go.
I guess that is a promising step. Seeing Twin Galaxies come out, and it was really embarrassing. About 2 weeks before they removed Billy Mitchell's scores, they ran a news article about how Billy Mitchell was about to sue the person that had exposed him. Mm-hmm. And they ran this, they were just like, we've analyzed law. And again, I'm a lawyer. So when I hear stuff like that, I'm really insulted. But they were like, we've analyzed the law. We've spoken to Billy Mitchell. This YouTuber is about to get his whole life destroyed because he exposed Billy Mitchell as a cheater. And they were like, because whatever, he was using Billy Mitchell's image or whatever nonsensical legal argument Billy Mitchell thought he had at the time. And since then, Twin Galaxies has gone back and in the most just embarrassing fashion edited that article. They have a note at the top that says, we've changed this because we were really, really dumb to put this out. It was really, but they were defending Billy Mitchell basically 2 weeks before they destroyed his entire livelihood, destroyed all of his scores, removed him from competition generally. 2 weeks before that, they were still so pro Billy Mitchell that they were running an article to kind of intimidate YouTubers. And I think that that's something to remember as we try to balance what Twin Galaxies is, as we try to accept them back into our lives.
I never cared. I still don't care. Like I said, you go into the smoky dens of Japan and watch these records be obliterated, and I don't have any stock in them.
Well, so and something personal for me, especially when it comes to Billy Mitchell, is he's supposed to be the best Donkey Kong Jr. player ever. And I don't know if he still has the world record, but he did forever, and he kept submitting scores that were better than whoever would set a higher score. And now Donkey Kong Jr., I've actually been in like the 500,000 range in Donkey Kong Jr. That's his 6th score. That's a monster score. Mm-hmm. And now Billy Mitchell has the world record, or used to have the world record, of nearly 1 million. Mm-hmm. And so, like, as a gamer who thought he was really good at the game, and I still think I'm really good at Donkey Kong Jr., I don't know where that leaves me in terms of like Twin Galaxies and what I'm supposed to do with this information, where someone's supposedly twice as good as I am, which, I mean, I think there's actually been legitimate scores after that, but having Billy Mitchell totally crap all over my scores and have it potentially be fake. Like, what does a gamer do Do we just write off Twin Galaxies forever? What do we do with those scores? What do we do with their tens of thousands of scores that are there right now, some of which are definitely fake?
I don't think records are important. That's how I feel about it. I feel it is better. It is more meaningful for me to be better than Jeremy Withers at a given game.
Well, yeah, everyone wants to be better than Jeremy Withers. That's true.
That's true. Why do you think I'm here right now?
I mean, the God's honest reason why I play.
Can that be the new yardstick? We make Jerry set up a score on every game.
Well, a lot of people are going to probably blow me out of the water pretty quick.
But why I play and why I played Mr. Do was because I knew you liked it. I knew you played it, and I wanted to see if I could beat that score. Because I knew you existed.
Well, interestingly enough, this is a total side note, but on Mr. Do, we have a cocktail coming up that's an original release cocktail. And we pulled our previous one because none of the scores could be submitted to Twin Galaxies, could qualify on the insane restrictions they'd made, which is kind of silly now, knowing what we know about Twin Galaxies. But we have a Mr. Do coming to the floor probably at the end of next week.
But it looks an awful lot like that.
It's the one next. It's the one right behind Jeremy. The cocktail just behind him.
I can't see it, but I'm totally pointing.
That will come to the floor running an absolutely original qualifying Mr. Do board, because there were all these different generations of Mr. Do.
Right.
There were all these different versions that came out. We have one. We sourced one because Mr. Do became kind of popular with our players, and I think Mr. Do is a really cool game.
It's because of you, by the way.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's an awesome game. It's a fun game.
Like that's what I'm saying about these records. Like, you find a personal connection to it, and then you want to beat that person. And that makes it meaningful. And now there's a whole group of players who play Mr. Do, some from back in the day, and others, just generation of, hey, there's people playing this game.
Well, and I think it's kind of interesting to talk about the different ways you can cheat. The Mr. Do we had on the floor was supposed to be impervious to the weird 100...
Oh, the glitch.
Or the 255 lives hack or whatever. And I had tried to duplicate it, and I could never do the hack, the little cheat where you... how it works is the actual... ROM chips and the RAM can't store a negative value. So instead it just rounds it back around to 255. So if you die in the perfect way, instead of going to 0, it goes to -1, which for the game system is 255. And then all of a sudden you have 255 lives to burn because there's no reason for it to get to 0 ever until you go all the way through them. And so the version we had was supposed to be not one you could do that hack on. They had caught it. They were supposed to fix it. Turns out you can do it on the version we had out, and some kid found it. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember.
We offered like $100 bounty for the first person to score 500,000 points on our version, and someone scored it the next day doing the hack.
Yeah,
and everyone was really grumpy at the kid for cheating and everything, but it made us realize that all of the records that had been scored on that had to be questioned. Like that's as much as it takes. Like, I never submitted a score higher than 500,000 because I never actually really got above 500,000 on that but as soon as that kid showed us it was possible, and as soon as our players started doing it, we couldn't really trust any of the records, even if we know that person 100% and we know it's a true score.
Yeah, I've seen Troy's score of 800,000. I've seen him actually do it. But again, that only proves it to me.
Right.
So, I've seen him do it, and I've also seen him do it with the glitch and get like 1.6 million and just get very bored and just, all right, this is pointless.
That's actually the worst part, is watching the kid have 200 plus lives.
Continually die.
And he's just like, oh my God, can I get my money already? He's just killing himself, and you're like, this sucks. Yeah. Okay, so Billy Mitchell, he's had all his records. I still
stand by my claim from the Spring Series podcast with Chris Wilson that I would take Chris Wilson live in literally any game over Billy Mitchell live.
Well, that would be really fun. Like, to have Billy Mitchell show up in an arcade like Free Play and play the games. The only one
that might be a worry is Donkey Kong. Chris Wilson's great at Donkey Kong.
Right.
So he would have to be legitimately great to beat him at it. Well, I know Chris isn't going to choke. He doesn't choke.
We've been looking for, and we still haven't had it happen, even though there's dozens, hundreds of people who can score a true million points on Donkey Kong. We've never had a 1,000,000-point Donkey Kong score on our games. We've had in the 800,000s, which Billy Mitchell has allegedly actually scored. All of his scores, especially. And so this is kind of interesting.
Is it six? What's his highest referee verified score? Is it like 650, something like that? That was the classic one, right?
His original was 886.
Okay.
That was the world record forever.
Right.
In Donkey Kong. And he has never, I don't believe, scored that high live. I'm double checking right now. I'm trying to look over this little cheat sheet I have. But his highest live score, I believe, is in the 866 range, which is still a good score. That means he doesn't suck at Donkey Kong.
By the way, that would mean you beat Chris Wilson.
Right. Well, and
I've still got my money on Chris Wilson.
Well, and so yeah, he's Billy Mitchell's constantly and forever been very boisterous and everything, and so it actually gained a lot of fans, and it also made a lot of people kind of put off. He was the heel, right, of the arcade world, of the video game world. The potential like bad guy who some people loved, some people hated, some people questioned, and I think having him be found out as a cheater, which I don't think now we're the only people saying that, because Guinness Book of World Records removed his records. Twin Galaxies has banned him from every future competition. He's not allowed to submit a score to Twin Galaxies ever again, under the wording of their ban. Means, they're trying to get rid of him. They're trying to distance themselves. But, like, it's really interesting to have this guy who everyone in the real world knows. Outside of the arcade world, everyone actually knows Billy Mitchell. And now they've just completely shunned him and made him disappear. What I wanted to talk to y'all about is, like, how could he, in your eyes, regain his, like, top tier gamer status? I mean, he was named Video Game Player of the Century, and we got a lot of crap because we said he had self-named. Apparently, some obscure crap had named him that, and then on every banner ever, which, to be fair, if I was named Video Game Player of the Century by anyone ever, that would be on my business card. That would be on my shirts. Like, all right, so how can he redeem himself in your eyes?
On that note, I just won a singles tournament in ST in Japan.
It's true, no big deal.
It was one that I was capable of winning. When everybody asked, how good were the players? I won. Like, that's how good they were. But it's true, and I'm not going to let them forget. So on that note of never letting someone forget that you were the gamer of the century. But
for sure.
Jeremy, what do you think?
For me, like, I think just the gravity of the situation, like, okay, this guy was apparently like the arcade video game player. And then for somebody like, Guinness to also come in on top of Twin Galaxies and strip him of basically everything, I don't see how the guy can be redeemed. How could you ever trust the guy's word ever again?
You have to do it live. You have to do it in person, and that's it. As a competitor myself and as a gamer, someone just wiping the slate clean and saying, do it all over again, deleting your save files as you were. I have fun playing the game. I have fun competing. I have fun with all that stuff. I would do it live. I would go and play, and then I would redeem myself. Just, you don't believe me? I'm going to show you.
If he had such an issue doing that before, though, like,
see, that's the real question.
Would he do it now,
or can he?
All right, so allegedly in 2004, in public, he scored 933,000 on Donkey Kong. Allegedly, and that's still pretty old score. That's before King of Kong. That was actually what Steve Wiebe was targeting in King of Kong. What was trying to beat, and was trying to, he was trying to get the kill screen, which you can get to the kill screen in Donkey Kong without setting even that high of a score.
Right.
But if you remember from King of Kong, he was trying to be the first person at Fun Spot to hit the kill screen, trying to, he was chasing the ghost of Billy Mitchell and just destroying him. And of course, like, that movie, what's really interesting to me is now that movie, and we'll get back to how he can redeem himself, but that movie had so much, so many people saying it made Billy Mitchell look like the bad guy through editing and through, like, different stuff. And now you go back and watch it, and of course, Billy Mitchell is actually the bad guy. He's in the background cheating to make Steve Wiebe just lose his mind. And even after cheating, Steve Wiebe keeps breaking his stupid bullshit scores. Steve Wiebe is the best Donkey Kong player in the world at that time. It's been passed since, largely because the documentary spurred so many players to come back. But Wiebe is there, dominant, going to Fun Spot, kill screening at Fun Spot, being the first person ever, scoring these insane scores. And I guess it's totally interesting to me that Billy Mitchell, his second claim to fame, like that second wave came a lot from King of Kong. I mean, Billy Mitchell's, if I remember correctly, even in that Nibbler documentary, like throwing shade at Nibbler, like it's crazy to me because he was so big that every time someone had any question about a single arcade, period, they had to go talk to Billy Mitchell. And the whole time, at least since King of Kong, and potentially before,
he speaks with that villainous insecurity at all times.
Right.
Wasn't he also upset, like when the movie came out, like he was upset that, it paints me as the antagonist type thing. Like he was upset about that already. So
honestly, I would take pride in that. He is a very good on-screen villain.
Be the heel, yeah.
Yeah, he was
what's
the heel.
really sad, like I would have been very careful if I was him because he had just faked all those scores.
Well, that too.
Like instead,
honestly, that falls right in the line with the heel. He's finally been exposed.
Like he should have doubled down and been like. He shouldn't have been like, that makes me look bad. He should have been like, yeah, Steve Weeby just sucks. And I'm better than him. And you all suck. And like, he should have just like gone for it because he had to know this day was coming. Like, could you imagine how tough the last decade's been on him? Like, have you ever told a lie that you know is eventually going to get found out, like when you're a teenager or something? Maybe y'all have never experienced this. I was pre-training to be a lawyer, I guess. I don't know. But I definitely remember being terrified that my parents were going to find out that I was secretly smoking pot or something.
Right.
And I would like not be as careful enough. I'd put it in my top drawer and then come home from school every day and pull it with my top drawer and see if my weed was still there. Like that kind of stuff. I was paranoid 24/7. Do you think he was going through like a decade of that?
If he was doing this for so long, though, maybe
got comfortable. Yeah.
I mean, he convinced himself maybe that this is totally legit, and he just, I mean, at that point, you got to think the dude was consumed by it at this point because he was selling it still, right? So probably not at this point. I feel like he
probably right, but it did become a part of his persona. So he lived that heel persona, that insecurity. So I think you're right. He probably would have passed a lie detector test about him cheating, and he still legitimately cheated.
Yeah, and he would have believed that I'm not doing anything wrong because he'd just been doing this for so long already.
And honestly, that's what I expect his ultimate reaction is to be, is just to deny and deny and deny, even though it's been proven false. Because again, he's just fooled himself at this point, and there will never be a time when he actually comes out and proves it live.
Well, so
I may be wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
I guess what we should talk about, because after he was exposed, after Twin Galaxies, up in Milwaukee at the, I think it's the Midwest Game Fest or Midwest Classic Gaming Fest or whatever, he made an appearance. But before we get to that, I want to talk about when you saw him in Austin at the Classic Game Fest. Like, did you have, so this was before he'd been exposed. This is before all of those little kind of research studies came out on YouTube and on the different internet websites exposing him and explaining frame by frame why he's a dirty, stupid, no good cheater who is just totally abusing your trust. When you saw him live, besides being, and let's go ahead and get into it because I hope he comes to our arcade sometime. I hope he proves himself. I hope he scores 1,000,000 points on our Donkey Kong and blows my mind. But in the meantime, you saw him live before he'd been exposed, before he'd even been questioned. How much time did he spend talking about how good of a player he was?
Oh, over an hour. Over an hour. That was every word he said.
He was on stage just saying that he's the best, right?
Yes, and going through his greatest hits, as he always does, of whom he beat and when he beat them and why he signs his name the way he does and how this indicates that. And yeah, it's all about his greatness.
And I mean, we know because we are we're an arcade that has paid people to come. We've paid appearance fees and stuff. We know that him and everyone that appears at these things, but definitely Billy Mitchell was charging a pretty substantial appearance fee at the time. I guess describe kind of like, did you feel like you got good value paying to see Billy Mitchell speak?
I did not pay to see Billy Mitchell speak. I paid an event and he was there. I paid to go and hang out with my friends and support my friend Lauren Featherstone, who was deciding to be there. I even advised her against it.
Right. All right. So Billy Mitchell shows up and he gives his speech. He gives this weird presentation, right? Because he actually became popular before he got exposed. He'd become popular over the last few years.
We're talking about, 2017 Classic Game Fest in Austin. I know the whole thing was streamed, so you can probably find it online, including me awkwardly being on stage.
What's great is for the 2 years before that, he was kind of gaining this like notoriety as just being terrible at going and making these appearances and making these speeches, like not preparing enough, not really doing what he should do, which is give an entertaining 1 hour talk. And so if you kind of go, he was giving the same speech at most places,
right, and
then trying to incorporate the crowd, which it sounds like at Classic Game Fest, he pulled all of the people with a free play shirt on stage.
Yes, he did.
For no reason. I mean, Lauren Featherstone had just broken the Tapper World Record. That's a major world record. We know she did it for real. You know, we know she actually did it under the hardest possible real conditions because she was playing a tapper that killed her life. It was a later model tapper that every time she hit, was it 1,000,000 points, she just lost a life, right?
Yes, 1,000,000 points. Not every million, but there was a glitch that killed her at different million points, and there was a screen glitch that happened sometimes. It was inconsistent,
right? So and it's been recognized in some of those later model tappers when they were cutting costs to save money. We actually have tappers that don't do that. We have tappers that do that. We have tappers that display different things. Once you get into the stratosphere of the millions of points, which I've never scored on tapper, so I don't even know what that's like.
No.
So she had just broken the world record, had all this publicity. She gets invited to Classic Game Fest. Was she invited specifically by Billy Mitchell?
Walter Day and Billy Mitchell, yeah. So I think it was Walter Day who specifically invited her, if I'm not mistaken.
So Walter Day, famous founder of Twin Galaxies,
former owner of Twin Galaxies,
who has nothing technically to do with Twin Galaxies.
Correct.
Now he just makes appearance fees.
He also is he's still the referee image of Twin Galaxies. So he's like the Jerry West of the logo.
Right, and I think it's important because and I spoke about this in the last podcast, but I didn't get into detail. I met Walter Day in 2001 in Minneapolis at the Mall of America during an event where I, as a gamer, was there. And he was there with some arcades and stuff. And it's really funny now because I own classic arcade games and classic arcades. And I was making fun of him for playing Pac-Man and stuff. I was like, Counter-Strike is the future.
We're totally wrong.
But I was talking to him, and I was like, because that was the big event of this Mall of America. We were on the stage. We won. It was huge, and he printed us at the back of the book. But my entire impression of him, and I was 16 at the time, or maybe even 15, was that he was a total showman. Like, it didn't act like he didn't really care that much about this stuff. He cared about like the spectacle. And now that I look back on it, he didn't care. All he really wanted was people like Billy Mitchell to break those high scores. People that had personalities to break those scores. So Walter Day has not been brought up a lot because he sold Twin Galaxies, and there was a whole transition issue, and people have said that the new owner of Twin Galaxies, and I'm forgetting his name right now, but I don't care because he has continued the same crap. That like they've tried to excuse the new owner as kind of just adopting the scores, but they've continued to adopt scores based on their friends. They've continued to do that, and now since the controversy, they've tried to go back on it. But I wonder, like, what long term in terms of high scores we're gonna do. I know you said you don't even care about high scores, but like, Walter Day was a showman. Walter Day just cared about getting these players to score high scores, and now we have no big personable people scoring these world records. I mean, Lauren Featherstone might be the most personable person that we've had set a world record on an arcade game in the last 2 years.
Right. Yeah.
So like, where do we go from here? Do we just forsake Twin Galaxies, build our own little communities in our different towns, and have our good players, and that's it, or do we try to consider high scores a thing again? Because like I was just saying, you don't care about high scores, but
I don't think they're valid.
It's a big deal.
I don't think the world records are valid at all. Like, the listed world records, I think are bunk, unless it's a perfect game on Pac-Man. It's a perfect game on Pac-Man, but then it becomes a speed run. Who can get the faster perfect?
Well, have there been a bunch of perfect Pac-Man games? Just as an aside, lately.
I don't know about lately, but there have been a bunch of perfect Pac-Man runs, and now it is a speed run.
I know there were like 6 of them. I'll pull it up, but keep talking. Talk to me about high scores. Talk to me about why we should just not care about high scores, because I think that's where you're going.
Yeah, because there's just you can't accurately like track them, and they become worthless or worth whatever stock you put into it. It's I'm the leader of this list of high scores, and then there are better people out there in the world. Every time I see it, whether it's a bunk claim of, hey, I can go for longer in this game, or it's I straight up saw it with my own eyes, just people playing into the night these games, and I think it's impossible, and you couldn't even convince them. Like, if you wanted them to register the world record, first of all, it's just nines on the machine forever, and it stops tracking the score, and then if you want to register it, like, you'd have to sit out. They're not even going to bother with it. They're too busy playing the game.
Right.
Too busy having fun.
Yeah, I think especially now with like the Twin Galaxies controversy, it's like, okay, well, how do you even? What's the next step? Like, how do you even create like a governing body at this point?
I think time is much more interesting too than the marathoning records. All apologies to Lauren and to Lonnie McDonald, the traveling joust player who crushes on joust everywhere. The marathoning records, they end up being, tests of human endurance. How long can you stand up and play this game? Days on end until you die. It's much more interesting to me to see like how this is sort of the Pac-Man Championship Edition, and by the creator of Pac-Man. Put a timer on it, 10 minutes. How much points can you score in 10 minutes? This is what speedrunners do.
Yeah, it took us a long time to really understand that there is a certain beauty in that, just limiting people to play a game for 5 minutes and figuring out how to perfect it and stuff like that, because there are all the Williams games, the Joust that Lonnie plays, and Robotron and stuff, that there are a number of players in the world that can basically just play forever.
Yeah, especially these older games that are not made with that thought in mind of,
right.
It benefits the player to limit the player and how long they can play, and it does.
So I don't really know where we go. I mean, I know we were super happy when Lauren Featherstone, right? Someone who was younger than the game she was playing broke that world record.
Great story, and
that made us all feel good.
And we all have a personal connection with her too.
So I guess like long term, but I remember Lauren Featherstone, and we talked about this in the last podcast. She wanted that Twin Galaxies recognition.
Yeah, she did.
But there are plenty of players out there, and I guess that's what you're getting to, that don't care about Twin Galaxies recognition. And
absolutely, yeah.
And that alone is enough to, I mean, besides Twin Galaxies accepting a bunch of stupid cheater scores like Billy Mitchell, who just faked everything, and Twin Galaxies let that be the world record. Besides that, there are a lot of scores that, could be fake or just never had been submitted that are the world record. These players in, for example, Japan that have actually had access to these games for the last 20 years, and instead of submitting the scores, they've just gotten really, really good, and they show up there.
That's not why they play.
Right, they have fun.
They play in competition with themselves,
right.
which is always going to be the way to go. And your own high score, by the way, beating your own high score, you have a very personal connection to that. Yeah. That means the world. Yeah. And that means the world to me.
I think that's the greatest damage done by Twin Galaxies in a lot of ways, is when as soon as you get good at a game, you start looking up who's the best. What is the best score? And when you get to the point where you find a score that is impossible, but you never know that, it hurts your self-esteem, because no matter how good you get at that game, you're never going to be the best.
It's literally impossible.
And it's actually impossible.
Yeah, it's and the ones that we know that are impossible are just really frustrating to watch people just crush games and do perfect games, literally perfect. But it's not as high score as the high score on Twin Galaxies. But it was indeed perfect. And in fact, we're going to watch him do it again. Perfect.
I think that's actually something. Yeah. So Chris Paga, we mentioned last podcast. We were talking more about his Sinistar?
Yeah, Sinistar.
But ignoring Sinistar and talking about Dragon's Lair.
Yeah,
he is the best Dragon's Lair player probably in the world. He has now, and in the previous podcast we talked about how he really trusted Twin Galaxies. We talked about how he really thought that those high scores, and it's more his modesty coming out. He's just kind of like, I guess someone did that was better than me. And now he's played Dragon's Lair to the point repeatedly that he's perfect.
Yeah.
He has duplicated perfect games in Dragon's Lair.
Right.
Burning his lives where he has to burn his lives so he can maximize his points. He's point pressed he's been perfect. And I think just a couple days ago, he finally said, I don't think that the Dragon's Lair world record is possible on a real Dragon's Lair.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's always been dubious. Like, it's always just been one of those things where he just keeps trying and keeps playing, and yeah, it just... Well, he does enjoy playing the game.
Right.
And it's his bar trick, to be honest with you, because
Well, Dragon's Lair is great because you can break the world record potentially in like 15 minutes, 10 minutes. Like
potentially. It does have a limit to it.
It's not a long game.
It does have a limit to it. Somehow, though, someone has scored higher than the limit.
Right, and I think that's what finally. I think actually though, and maybe this is going to happen with a lot of players. The Billy Mitchell news of Billy Mitchell faking his scores has helped Chris Paga realize there's a bunch of fake scores out there, because Paga is so good at Dragon Slayer and he keeps turning in these perfect games. I mean, he owns the world record. It might not be recognized by Twin Galaxies, I believe, on the 5 live dip switch setting, or is it reversed?
3 is the one where his score is the highest ever recorded. 5 is the one where there's a score so high that.
So yeah, and I believe 5 was the big one, kind of promulgated by Twin Galaxies as the one. Like that's what you need to chase.
Correct, and he's the he's done perfect games with both many times on both settings.
Right, and he's practiced a ton, like on the DVD version of Dragon's Lair that was released, and all these things that are really close, because Dragon's Lair is so different than a lot of the emulation out there, because it is actually you're interacting with an actual video. Like an actual video file is playing on a disk drive or whatever you're doing, or even on the emulation, and you're just interacting with it. It's almost, it actually was very close to perfectly emulated playing on a remote on a DVD, because it's just it's a few directions, right, that you're choosing, and you just have to learn the timing.
Yeah, up, down, left, right, or sword.
Right. So
it's the world's longest quick time event.
I mean, it's a really cool game, and it's beautiful. And of course Don Bluth made it, and he had some amazing animation, and he continued an amazing career. But
and if you want to see the game played perfectly, come to Free Play Richardson, probably on a Wednesday.
Yeah, most Wednesdays, Thursdays.
He was definitely there last night, definitely putting on the display for some college kids who were just jumping up and down, celebrating. Like, we heard screaming from the other side of the arcade. Oh my God! And Paga's at it again.
Free Play Richardson right now is the only arcade running at 100% down to the Laserdisc player, the Laserdisc original Dragon's Lair. There are 2 or 3 arcades that are running the actual Dragon's Lair Laserdisc, but through different modifications and stuff. And of course, we actually have one of the 3 is near us at Tornado Terry's, and they built this weird, beautiful but ridiculous showcase cabinet. That's like a step. I don't even know what they used, but they used like a T-Mech / like they hacked up all these arcades.
They hacked up T-Mech.
Right, yeah, and built this Dragon's Lair that is still running a Dragon's actual Laserdisc.
They can hack up a Dr. Mario.
As of 3 or 4 years ago, it was still doing that, and that's one of the things. Every time we're the only one running an all original, they're like, yeah, but what about Tornado Terrace? And I'm like, please show me a photo. And they show me the photo. I'm like, come on, guys. It's beautiful. It's a custom job, but it's not actually Dragon's Lair, and it's not the original. And I can't remember which arcade. I think it might be Vector of Volcano, that they had switched to a Dexter emulation that's very close, and then they went back to the Laserdisc because they weren't super happy with how the Dexter was running. But point being, Chris Paga, probably the best Dragon's Lair player. Certainly the only one with as much experience on an original Dragon's Lair recently.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
In the world, and he has played perfect games, and his score is still not as high as the world record. So Twin Galaxies, what the hell do we do with them? We don't know. Billy Mitchell, dirty cheater. We definitely know that.
Definitely know that.
We will invite Billy Mitchell repeatedly. We'll start putting a bunch of money on that as it comes, because I feel like if I could get, so we've never had that 1 million point game on our Donkey Kong. I feel like if
there are players that can do it.
Oh yeah, but I feel like if Billy Mitchell
are they named Billy Mitchell, not unless they go to the courts and get their name changed to Billy Mitchell.
If Billy Mitchell put in his highest life score ever on my Donkey Kong and then signed the marquee, I'd probably burn it just for the spectacle. I'd probably just throw it in the garbage right in front of his face just to be a jerk. But I'd actually really love that. Like, I would secretly being like, I'm doing this just for the hits, Billy Mitchell. But congratulations, way to go! You finally scored 1 million. Like, it would
walk away in slow motion as it explodes too.
Have him sign in, like break it over my knee right in front of him, not break eye contact.
Slow motion cigarette.
God, I'm giving away all my secrets to Billy Mitchell right now. But yeah, no, it's important. It's the biggest arcade news maybe ever, and that's why we're talking about it still. And that's why we had to feature it on this podcast, because The New York Times on Wednesday wrote an article. I've spoken to 3 or 4 different media organizations about this. You were mentioned on the ticket just for them trying to figure out what the hell to make of this news.
Right.
And the ticket is the biggest radio station in DFW, which is the the third biggest media market in the world. I mean, we're talking like 11 million listeners possible in DFW.
Yeah, that's how many people know that you will wreck them at NBA Jam,
NBA
apparently,
Jam.
from Jake.
And of course, Chris Delp
I can prove it live though if you want to come out.
Well, so here we go. We have an NBA Jam tournament coming up. If you're better than Chris Delp, please come and play in this tournament.
Yeah,
Chris Delp's not allowed to play in it, but he'd like to beat you after the tournament.
No
Grudge
problem.
match.
He'll take a random bartender who's never played NBA Jam and still beat you. He's very good.
I can do that as well.
Right.
If I can get random bartender who's never played to do it with me, yes.
So, well, we don't really know if Billy Mitchell's ever touched a real arcade game.
Oh, I could do it with Billy Mitchell as a partner.
All right. So Billy Mitchell, come play NBA Jam with Chris Delp and set an actual record.
Me and Billy Mitchell against you and yours.
Your group of flunkies.
Yeah.
So, gosh, I haven't watched King of Kong since this all came out.
Good movie.
How terrible does Billy Mitchell look now?
I got to think the movie feels completely different.
Right. Well, I remember in the movie...
Well, because there's no drama of is he actually...
That's true.
Well, but you remember
That's
the movie
good.
like focuses on that little like frame skip in the middle of the game? Like there was a little...
the video is in contention even in the movie.
Right,
Yeah.
and he submits like a VHS tape,
Correct.
of his gameplay.
That he only allows to be viewed one single time, and Steve Wiebe.
Yeah.
I'm confusing him with myself for some reason. He is not allowed to view it because he's live kill screening a game at the time.
He's actually playing at Twin Galaxies, being the first person to ever kill screen the Donkey Kong at Twin Galaxies, which was an original Donkey Kong bot just for Twin Galaxies.
At FunSpot, right?
Or FunSpot, yeah. At FunSpot. And yeah, that's like so amazing. And Walter Day's there because it was whatever FunSpot used to call their tournament. They've changed it a few times now. And Walter Day or Billy Mitchell doesn't show up, and there's just like a little skip, and like there's like the slow zoom on the little skip in the movie, and you're paying attention to the skip, and of course it turns out you shouldn't be paying attention to that. You should be paying attention to the whole game because it's all bullshit, all total fake. Billy Mitchell ruined arcade games for everyone forever, and he's the worst human being on the planet until he shows up and he scores 1.1 million at free play. Which he has done on video before. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. We wanted to do a follow-up. We wanted to talk about Billy Mitchell a little bit. I feel like hopefully now we don't have to talk about Billy Mitchell for a while until he shows up to free play, right?
Yeah.
Can we make that? There's a moratorium on Billy Mitchell talk until he shows up to free play and plays our games.
See you next week, Billy.
We'll see you soon. Until then, Free Play Podcast signing off. We'll be right back at you with some more interesting discussion that doesn't involve Billy Mitchell.
Hopefully.